whatever your industry, when it comes to broadcasting, maybe it's a particular sport, whatever it happens to be, Hall of Fame means that you are among the best of the best ever to do it. And Andrea Kremer certainly is that. She's now a chief correspondent for the NFL Network, but in the past, it's been part of Sunday Night Football, has worked for ESPN. She got her start at NFL Films. And over the weekend, she was among those inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as she received the prestigious Pete Rozelle TV and Radio Award. Andrea, what's a bit of the way you will describe this when people ask you in the future?
Wow. Well, initially I would say a blur just because there was so much activity going on. But I'll tell you something funny. My friends who know me the best were emailing all week before saying, we know how you are. You're always working. You're always worrying about what's next. You're always thinking about other people and what they have to do and what you have to do. Just enjoy the moment. This is sort of the quintessential live in the moment. And I'm very proud to report, Amy, that I did that. I accomplished it. And it was amazing. I mean, in some ways I felt like I was living through my own funeral, but it's beats the alternative. So, to hear all these wonderful things and have your work acknowledged as it was really just a tremendous thing, and obviously capped off by the fact that I was surrounded by family and friends and so many people that I'd worked with over the decades. It was a really, really special time.
People don't believe me when I tell them this, but I generally get a lot more nervous when there are people staring at me. Not so much when I'm on the radio, I'm in the studio by myself, but when I'm talking to a group of people that I can see, that's when I really get the butterflies. So as you're standing there on the stage in Canton over the weekend, did you have any kind of nerves?
Not so much. I didn't want my Hall of Fame acceptance speech to be on teleprompter. I had my notes, but I really wanted it to come from the heart, so I didn't feel nervous in that respect, even though it starts off and right before me, they had introduced, just like 100 or so Hall of Famers, and I'm sitting there as Rich Eisen, the MC, steps up to the mic to introduce me, and I'm sitting here saying to myself, no one is going to hear one word I say. No one's going to pay attention. They're not going to care because they're looking at all these Hall of Famers that are filing back to their seats. And I stood up and I started talking, and it was like dead silence. And that was a bit of a disconcerting moment, but a good, albeit good. And then the other moment I had like that was the day of the induction, they run the piece that was produced on me, narrated by Robin Roberts, which was just a tremendous honor that I'd asked her to do that, and she agreed. It was just amazing to hear, the mellifluous voice of Robin Roberts. So they play the whole story, and then I have to walk out with David Baker. So the first thing I said to David is, just please walk slowly because I am wearing heels. You're not used to that with people up here, and he kind of chuckled. But then I go up there, he presents me with the plaque, and I look out, and they gave me a standing ovation. And David says audibly, look, they're standing for you. And that's the moment where it really, I just sort of sat there dumbfounded. I didn't even know what to do, what to say. I didn't want to wave idiotically. I didn't want to curtsy. I didn't know what to do. But the idea that people were giving me a standing ovation, that was absolutely incredible. And then as I started to walk up the stage, a bunch of the Hall of Fame guys just started hugging me. And I step off the stage, and Marcus Allen is there, and he kind of takes my hand to help me down the little stairs. And he says to me, you're a Hall of Famer. And then Jerome Bettis is standing there, and he said, you're one of us. And then I just, that was an amazing moment.
Wow. You referenced the Robin Roberts video and her doing the voiceover as your story is told a little bit. It was so neat to hear her. And you talk about how even as a young broadcaster, someone who had big dreams, you never even envisioned the Hall of Fame, thought it was a possibility. So now that it's reality and it's Andrea Kremer, Hall of Famer, how does it feel?
Well, it feels good, but I'm right back to work. I'm right back to looking at various projects that I have coming up. it's funny, it was reminiscent to me, and I was telling the story. My two oldest friends in the world from when I was 2 years old and when I was 5 years old were there, and they knew my late parents very well. And my dad was a judge, and we'd sit at dinner, and my dad would say this jokingly, I dispense justice all day, and then I come home and my wife tells me to take out the garbage. And, in other words, you never lose track of your reality. And that's how I feel. I was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and then I came home and did the dishes. So, it doesn't change who I am. It's just a wonderful acknowledgement of a career that is still very much in play, which is important to me. A lot of times you get these honors, people are honored this way at the end of their career, and I'd like to think mine is still going strong. So hasn't changed me in any way. I'm still going to be as hardworking and as ever, but it is most definitely a nice imprimatur to have with your name.
It's such a privilege to have Andrea Kremer with us here on After Hours CBS Sports Radio, fresh off Hall of Fame weekend in Canton, Ohio, when she was inducted and received the Pete Rozelle Excellence in Radio and Television Award. Andrea, everyone has seen that picture now of you with your friend on a bed that's covered by NFL sheets. And you talk about in a tweet how even girls in baby doll pajamas can be Hall of Famers when they grow up. What is it about football that drew you to this sport? Why this sport?
Amy, it's a great question. And thank you for not asking me what people normally do, which is, oh, did you have brothers? And so I couldn't just, develop sort of a love for football on my own. But I joke about this, and I said it in my Hall of Fame speech, but it really is true. Some little girls played with Barbie, and I loved Larry Zonka. I loved the Miami Dolphins of the early 70s, and that really got me hooked on football. But my parents, they were just so supportive. They bought me books, and we went to the games, and they thought that was okay, and they didn't try to steer me in any different direction. And I really tried to learn about football. So starting when I was about, maybe 12 years old, the week leading up to the Super Bowl, I would cut out all the articles I grew up in Philadelphia, from the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Philadelphia Bulletin, and the New York Times. And I would paste it on pieces of paper. And in the morning of the Super Bowl, I would present it to my parents, sort of like a scouting report. So I was either doomed to be a journalist or a PR person. But I don't know why I really was captivated by the sport. I mean, I loved all sports, but football definitely stood out for me. And but at no moment, Amy, at no point did I ever think that my love for the game would translate into to any kind of a career, not to mention the career that I'm having.
I love it. I love that we live in a country where women can choose a career that's off the beaten path and still succeed at the highest level. Obviously, the path has not been without obstacles and challenges. I know that. I experienced them. I can only imagine that you have as well. So as you look back on this journey, at least to this point, because I know the journey is not over, what was the biggest obstacle for you, Andrea?
Well, I think that there's always a feeling that you have to prove yourself, your knowledge, why you're really there. And I truly try to keep blinders on about that because it wasn't going to serve me well to get wrapped up in things over which I had no control. So I remember back in, I hate to date myself here, it was in 1982, and I was the sports editor of the largest weekly newspaper in Pennsylvania. And Mike Quick, the Eagles wide receiver, was going to the Pro Bowl, and I wanted to profile him. So back at that time, women were not allowed in the locker room on non-game days. So the season had just ended. He was getting ready. He was cleaning out his locker and getting ready to go to the Pro Bowl, and I had gotten special dispensation to go in and interview him. So I go in there with my recorder, and we're just sort of sitting in adjacent lockers, just talking, not really doing the interview. And all of a sudden he stops and he looks at me and he goes, wow, you really know what you're talking about. And I kind of threw up my hands sort of, yeah, why else would I be here? And over the years we've always joked about this story, but it's that kind of feeling. And I just don't think that not you, but you personally, but you generally, that you can get dissuaded when people question you on things. You have to understand that this is the way that it's going to be, that we are judged by a different standard. I always say the same things, which is we're here, we're not going anywhere. The numbers are just going to get larger with more opportunities. But listen, a woman should never be hired because she's a woman. A person should be hired because they're qualified, they're talented, and oh, by the way, they happen to be a woman or a minority, whatever it is. I mean, I joke with John Walsh, my old mentor from one of my mentors from ESPN, the former executive editor. I tell him, I was the best draft pick he ever had. I mean, he plucked me and he saw journalistic qualities in me that I probably didn't even recognize in myself. So it's always great when you have someone that's going to take a chance on you because they see something in you, something that you may not really acknowledge in yourself.
Absolutely. A person like that worth his or her weight in gold. Andrea, you have made a career out of telling stories. What is the key to telling a compelling story?
Well, certainly listening and doing a good interview and gathering good material, not making yourself the story, but keeping the focus on the person on whom you are profiling. And I just think, I don't know. We're talking about mentors here. Talking about John Walsh. I talk about my first ever mentor, Steve Sable, and his ultimate phrase was, "Tell me a story, and it'll live with me forever." And that is really true. So if you can, especially in this day and age where of analytics and things like that, you can throw out numbers and you can throw out all kinds of facts in this, but if you tell a story that resonates for people, they're always going to remember it. And so it's a matter of really trying to ascertain what the story is and do your reporting and try to find out the things that are going to be of interest and things that will be memorable for your audience. I mean, even when I wrote my little speech, I try to put it in a narrative form. I try to tell a story. And I think that that's one reason that it resonated for people, is that I didn't just do a laundry list of thank yous, and I certainly didn't do a recap of my career, but I tried to tell a story. And I think in some ways it's a lost art, but I think that really even every game has a story that develops, storylines that develop, and I think that's one reason that we love live sports, because it's the ultimate reality. It is, you don't know what's going to happen, and it's a great story.
You are listening to the After Hours Podcast.
Andrea, I love to ask people who've been in the game for a long time, who've covered the business of football for years and years. When you look back, what are the major ways in which the sport has changed the most?
Well, I mean, the growth of the sport is just monumental, and that's obviously due to television. And even when I was back at ESPN, we were kind of the only game in town when it came to doing interviews and doing stories. We didn't have a whole lot of competition, but it's changed so dramatically, obviously more so in football than in any of the major sports. I mean, look at the proliferation of pregame shows, and of course, just it went from Sundays to Sunday and Saturday and Monday and Thursday, and there's this feeling of is there an oversaturation that's going on? Obviously, growing from 14 regular season games to 16 regular season games, that's a difference. But I think that there's just more of it here. People kind of still can't get enough of it. It's still, even though you look at the game and the violence is so palpable and so difficult for so many people to take, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that goes on. People, they may wince and look away, but they're still looking, and that's the thing. But yeah, I think that the whole business has changed, grown just exponentially, and the players have changed. But that also ties into the media and the ability to have their own outlet to tell their story, as opposed to quote unquote needing the media to put something out there for them. So yeah, I think it has changed, but in essence, the game is, and of course, it's quite legislated right now with the emphasis on health and safety. And but yeah, I mean, it's changed. Maybe a better word to use, Amy, is it has evolved.
And it continues to evolve every day, for sure. I feel like I could talk to you forever.
And you.
Thank you so much for a couple of minutes. Andrea Kremer, now a Hall of Famer with NFL Network and HBO Real Sports, as well as We Need to Talk on CBS Sports Network. And it's After Hours here on CBS Sports Radio. One more thing before I let you go. The question that often overwhelms me, but I'm passing it along to you. Since you are a Hall of Famer now, Andrea, as you run into young journalists, some who will tell you, I want to be just like you, what advice do you give them when they ask, whether it's men or whether it's young women who are trying to find a foothold in our industry?
Well, first of all, I would say to anybody, regardless of the gender, and I teach graduate school at Boston University, and it's something that I talk with my students about because I have a specific curriculum that I teach, but I also, as I say, I want to really impart to them what it means to be a professional. And so one of the things that I say to them is, don't take no for an answer, because the easiest thing when you ask for something or when you want something is for somebody to say no. Because if they say yes, they have to do something. They have to take another step. And a lot of times, people can be inherently lazy, so they don't really want to do that. So stay pleasantly persistent. Don't think that people are going to remember you, that they're going to be thinking about you. You want to stay on the radar. You need to be pleasantly persistent. I just had one of my students who just got a great job at CNN, and he said, I really followed through with what you did. He said, it wasn't comfortable, but I did it, and I understand it now. And so there's that, because it's hard, but listen, no one has the right to take away your dream. No one. And this isn't being Pollyanna-ish or anything like that, but at some point, you have to separate yourself from other people. And whether that's with your work ethic, whatever it is, but just do it the right way. That means don't cut corners, pay your dues. There's no job that is too small or too, quote unquote, beneath you. Do whatever it is to learn, and learn as much as you can, because a person may sit there and go, I want to be on the air, and it looks great. And I've said to people, well, why is it? Oh, it looks like a really cool job, and I get to meet the players. No. Wrong answer. You have no idea how much work goes into it. But you know what? When you learn about a profession, when you do everything that might be out there, you might find something that you never even knew existed. And all of a sudden, that opens up all sorts of things that you didn't know about. So, look, in this day and age, oh my goodness, there's so many opportunities with whatever medium it is, especially with the internet out there. I mean, there's so many different things that people can do, and you don't know till you get yourself out there. You make yourself as helpful and indispensable as possible, and don't take no for an answer.
Pleasantly persistent. I like it. I will remember that. Andrea, let me be the next person to add my congratulations for your induction into the Hall of Fame and this prestigious Pete Rozelle Award. In my opinion, storytelling is very often a lost art, but it is what hooks people, and you're one of the best to ever do it. So again, congratulations, and thank you so much for a few minutes.
Well, thank you, Amy. It's a great conversation. You asked terrific questions, and it's great to see that the next generation, if they're represented by folks like you, it's certainly we're certainly going strong. So thank you so very much for having me on.